back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Cris Cyborg is saying that she'll run Amanda Nunes the fade that she's been asking for after she fights a legit featherweight. Now this topic is very interesting because I hear Cris Cyborg's points, and at first I was agreeing with her as far as you're right. Everyone's saying that you've been fighting bantamweights and you want to fight a legit featherweight. I hear you. But then when you really think about it, it doesn't make much sense, especially when people like Miesha Tate come out and say, listen, even if Cris Cyborg does fight a legit featherweight like Megan Anderson, it doesn't mean anything, or it doesn't prove anything except for you can beat somebody your size. Somebody like Megan Anderson has argued she's not on the skill level of Cris Cyborg. So, it doesn't matter if you can beat another 145-pound chick if she's just a can. And I'm not saying Megan Anderson is a can, but what I'm saying is it doesn't matter that you can beat a 145-pound fighter if everyone expects you to beat that person. The only reason people want to see Cris Cyborg have a legit challenge, they don't just want to see her fight a legit featherweight. And if they do, when they say legit featherweight, they mean somebody that's highly skilled, not legit as in can make 145 pounds and not 135. So I hear you and all, Cris Cyborg and Cris Cyborg Nation, and I'm gonna let you finish and all, but Amanda Nunes versus Cris Cyborg would be one of the best female MMA fights of all time, and I ain't fucking around. That's legit shit, trill shit, real shit. Check this out, and I'm gonna run you through this, because Cris Cyborg has agreed to fight Amanda Nunes when one of her loyal fans asked, but after she fights one of these other chicks. And we've got down to the bottom of it. People say it's because she wants a legit featherweight, and the fact is it's really about the money from what it looks like here. She mentions multiple times that Amanda Nunes' last pay-per-view only sold 100,000. If you remember that pay-per-view, it was like Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko, and I believe Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero on that card, and it was rescheduled, and I mean, there was no star power on the pay-per-view. So for that argument, she says, now let's just get into Cris Cyborg, and I'll respond as we get into what she had to say. Okay, so Cris Cyborg first said, fact, GDR sold 2 times as many pay-per-views as Amanda Nunes' last fight. Imagine Cris Cyborg versus GDR in Brazil instead of Brazil versus Brazil in Rio. So she's saying GDR sold more pay-per-views than Amanda Nunes, which is a reason she'd rather fight a legit featherweight and GDR. There's a couple problems with that, unfortunately, for Cris Cyborg's argument. For one, GDR had the chance to fight Cris Cyborg. She vacated her title rather than fought Cris Cyborg. She said she doesn't want to fight Cris Cyborg first. I believe it had something to do with the hand injury, then like some police academy stuff. Then it turns out she didn't want to fight a cheater. So I don't understand what you're saying. Imagine Cris Cyborg versus GDR in Brazil if we know GDR doesn't want to fight Cyborg. Then the fan responded and said, come on, Cyborg, I'm one of your biggest fans and I always have been. Please take this fight for all of us. Look, Nunes is striking from the Rousey fight. She's got power and skill, but your poise and aggressiveness and boxing with Brockus, etc., you can beat her and make history. Screw GDR. He's saying, what are you talking about GDR for? This is another champion. And so she continued to say, well, I want to fight. This is her next tweet. You see at the top. I want to fight against a fighter with the win at 145 pounds in the last year. That's reminiscent of Demetrius Johnson when he said TJ Dillashaw's never fought at 125 pounds. He should have to fight one time before he fights me. And it's like, yo, that's, So Cris Cyborg said she tagged all of these other fighters. You might know Iron Lady MMA, that's GDR. We've already talked about why she's out of the question. She don't want to fight Cyborg. Now we talk about Megan Anderson. Megan Anderson is the chick that Miesha Tate has said, like, yeah, she's a legit featherweight, but she's not one of the most skilled featherweights. She just makes the 145 pounds. But I think it was Miesha Tate that pointed out Cindy Dandoise has submitted Megan Anderson. So she's saying if Cris Cyborg wants to fight a legit 45er, then how does it make, why would you want to fight Megan Anderson and not a chick that's beat Megan Anderson? So that's why the Megan Anderson kind of falls out, because it's like Megan Anderson had the opportunity of fighting Cris Cyborg at UFC 221 in her hometown. Cris Cyborg accepted that fight. Megan Anderson didn't want to fight. So scratch GDR off, scratch Megan Anderson off, and we move to Cindy Dandoise. And then Pam Sorensen, or Pam Bam Sorensen, and #1 headbuster. Honestly, before the Miesha Tate, when she said what she had to say, I didn't know much about Cindy Dandois. I have seen a couple articles on her. I've never saw her fights. She might be an Invicta, but what I'm saying is, out of these three names, Cindy Dandois, who's probably the biggest, you know, she's got the cosign from Miesha Tate, and Pam Bam Sorensen and the #1 head buster. Really, out of all 5 of those fucking names, none of those people are selling pay-per-views more than Amanda Nunes. None of them. I don't. And Cris Cyborg is saying, well, GDR sold 2 times Amanda Nunes. Well, yeah, that's because GDR was fighting Holly Holm. Holly Holm sold those pay-per-views, not GDR. So there's no way. That's insane to think that the pay-per-views that GDR sold are going to translate to your fight. No, if Holly Holm's not on that joint, those pay-per-views are completely exaggerated. GDR probably sold 1,000 of those pay-per-views. Holly Holm sold the other 199,000. So with that being said, that takes away from that argument. And then we'll just continue through these tweets, though, what Cris Cyborg had to say. The fan responded to her saying she wanted to fight against a fighter with a legit 145-pound win. And this is what Cris Cyborg had to say, or the fan responded. Okay, so what I'm talking about is, what about one of them taking Nunes on? Is it a possibility ever? I respect you. So what he's saying is, would you fight Amanda Nunes after? And Cris Cyborg responded and said, I will fight Amanda Nunes after. That's one of the big parts of this video. She's saying, yes, after I fight one of these chicks, I'll fight Amanda Nunes. And so it's like, all right, you know, she's saying she'll run Amanda Nunes to fade afterward, but at the same time, she goes back into it because a whole nother fan comes into this joint and is like, boom. But those are easy fights. Going back to Miesha Tate's point, he's saying Megan Anderson, Cindy Dandois, GDR, he's saying all of those are easy fights compared to Amanda Nunes, who's a champion. We know she's one of the best fighters in the world. So you're going to take an easy 145-pounder over the best 135-pounder in the world? Cris Cyborg then again responded, and this is where it goes back to the money. Amanda Nunes' last fight did 100,000 buys. That isn't a super fight, does little for the division or my career. So, she's correct in all of those things. It does, well, not for her career. It actually does a lot for her career as far as I'm concerned. But for the division, for the 145-pound division, no, fighting Amanda Nunes doesn't do a lot. Actually, I'm wrong there too. See, this is I kind of knew I was right, because she said Amanda Nunes' last fight did 100,000 buys. That's fine, but we all know what happened. First, Amanda Nunes had to pull out with sinusitis, so it was a rebooked title fight. And the co-main event on that pay-per-view was Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero for an interim title. There was no real star power to Amanda Nunes' pay-per-view, so that's not Amanda Nunes' fault. She's not drawing herself in Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey numbers. So she's putting off those pay-per-view buys on Amanda Nunes and then giving GDR credit for Holly Holm's pay-per-view buys. So that scratches that argument for me. Then she said this isn't a super fight just because of that. I disagree. It's a super fight because it's champion versus champion. If you want to say that, if Cris Cyborg's using that argument, then Demetrius Johnson versus TJ Dillashaw is not a super fight because Demetrius Johnson doesn't pull in millions of pay-per-views. No matter who Demetrius Johnson fights, if you're going to use this argument, it's not a super fight. So he might as well fight Ray Borg again or Sergio Pettis. If Cris Cyborg is going to use this argument, then Amanda Nunes will never be a part of a super fight if that's what you're going off of. So scratch that. I do believe this would be a super fight. And as far as it doing little for the division, that's wrong. Because if Cris Cyborg proves that she can beat the queen of 135 pounds, and I don't hear people talking about this enough, this is the queen of 135 pounds we're talking about. Amanda Nunes, the best of the best. There's no 135 pounder on the planet beating Amanda Nunes. There's probably going to be a couple Holly Holm fans that say, well, what about Holly? She ain't fought Holly yet. Yeah, I hear what you're saying and all, but we saw what happened with Valentina Shevchenko and Holly Holm. Amanda Nunes has now beat Valentina Shevchenko twice. Amanda Nunes has beat Ronda Rousey. Amanda Nunes is the queen of 135. She's also got the title. And when you want to compare versus Holly Holm, just a nitpick, I mean, Holly Holm's like, what, 1-4 in her last 5 fights. To be fair, they're all main events. Over half of them are championship fights. But if Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes fought tomorrow, which is also a very real possibility, why haven't we saw Amanda Nunes versus Holly Holm yet? That's a fight that could happen at bantamweight. The only other contender for Amanda Nunes is Raquel Pennington at this point. And, I mean, Holly Holm, you can always put in a title fight, but her record, I mean, she's just fighting the best of the best. So we'll leave Holly Holm alone for a second. But what I'm saying is Amanda Nunes is the queen of the bantamweight division. So, as far as Cris Cyborg's career is concerned, if you beat Amanda Nunes, you're letting everybody know your legacy and everything. There's not one 135-pounder on the planet that can fuck with Cris. None of them. There's not a bantamweight. Nobody. I need to fight a legit featherweight. And you've been fighting these other, you've been getting fed these other bantamweights. Why not beat the best bantamweight of all? And for this to be the only fight Cris Cyborg has I've never seen Cris Cyborg as reluctant to fight somebody as this. Like, no, it's Brazil versus Brazil. No, it's because of the money. No, I need to fight a legit featherweight. All of these reasons, and you know what I'm saying? Like, why wasn't this staying for your last fight? Holly Holm wasn't a legit featherweight. Was it just because Holly Holm sold pay-per-views, I guess? Well, what about Tanya Evans? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's because it's for the title, so Cris Cyborg has a million reasons she doesn't want to fight Amanda Nunes, but honestly, to me, none of them really hold water. I mean, to me, it does do something for your division. It shows that the featherweights, the bantamweights ain't fucking with the featherweights. It does do something for your career. It shows that you need to fight legit featherweights from here on out. No more bantamweights for Cris Cyborg. You want to put an end to that? Boom, beat Amanda Nunes, because I don't know if she can. I would pick Cris Cyborg off the top of my head. I would assume she's the favorite. But Amanda Nunes is a bad motherfucker. And I'm leaning, the more Cris Cyborg does this, I'm starting to lean toward Amanda Nunes. You already know I rock with Amanda Nunes. So with that being said, man, it's looking like Cris Cyborg will fight Amanda Nunes after she fights a legit featherweight. But the problem with that is Dana White, Amanda Nunes, and even Amanda Nunes' coaches sound pretty confident that Amanda Nunes versus Cyborg is next. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see how far Cris Cyborg goes turning down this fight. I mean, she's gave us every reason. She might have another reason. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting, though. You'd expect it to be Amanda Nunes saying, nah, I don't know. It's Brazil versus Brazil. And, Cris Cyborg, I'm a bantamweight, but it's the opposite. So with that being said, it is what it is. Before I get out of here, quick note to the full-time family. I'm going to start changing these titles around. You might start seeing, like, weird words in the title or, like, misspelled words, because the way YouTube fucking, they're wrecking me on these ads. And they're not wrecking me because, of course, I wasn't doing this at all. But what I mean by wrecking me is I'm saying, like, they mark 75% of my videos as not suitable for all advertisers, and I can show you guys the pictures and shit, until it hits 1,000 views. And then and it has to do that within 7 days. If it doesn't hit 1,000 views within 7 days, where you can appeal it, then your shit is just left on, like, not suitable for all advertisers. So instead of getting, I don't know, 4 pennies off of the video, you'll only get maybe 1. So I mean, it is what it is. I'm just collecting pennies on these videos anyway and stuff, but I'm just saying, like, usually 98% of the time the appeal goes through and they're like, oh, your video is suitable for all advertisers, but it's just like there's one word in the tags or one word in the title that flagged the video in the YouTube algorithm. So it's like, if I put fucking fight in the words, if I put fight in the title or fight in the tags, it might, mark the video. Or if I put Cris Cyborg destroys Holly Holm, the word destroys will demonetize the video. So I've got to find out those key words like destroys or fights or whatever the words are, so I can not use those words, and my shit will just be suitable for all advertisers, because 98% of the appeals always come back. But that's still 1,000 views per video, which usually that's where they cap off at. I might get 400 more views after that, but usually that's where they cap off at. So yeah, it's just, I mean, it's not nothing big. I'm still going to be doing this. I just want to try and change that around. I've seen a couple other YouTubers, like, changing their titles and trying to get around those fucking algorithms, because the video's cool. It's not like I'm actually doing anything crazy. So with that being said, it is what it is. Thanks for listening. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter to join the free, I'm giving away a fucking t-shirt. I ain't even got me one yet. Full-time MMA. It's going to be like this, but it's going to say full-time MMA, and it's going to be dope. But I'm giving one of those t-shirts away. Premium tee. All you got to do is follow me on Twitter or Instagram. If you follow me on both, you're entered twice. So with that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out. Where's Cris Cyborg versus Nunes? Come on, man.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.